I can't help it. I'm scared shitless.
You motherfuckers keep f***ing with my goddamn execution. There's gonna be...
From serial killers who broke down in tears on their final day to the ones who looked forward to it with a smile, these are the final 24 hours of every U.S. serial killer who is now dead. What goes through the mind of a man like Ted Bundy in his final hours? Did he feel remorse for the brutal murders he committed? Or was his fear of death the only thing that consumed him? Today, we're unlocking the doors to death row's darkest secrets, the cold concrete cells, the sterile execution chambers, and the twisted final words of America's most notorious killers. From the charming law student who became a monster, to the woman who promised she'd return like a mothership. These are the haunting final countdowns that changed criminal history forever. Ted Bundy, the final countdown of a monster. It's January 23rd, 1989, and Ted Bundy, a man responsible for the deaths of at least 36 women, had only hours left before his execution. For years, he had evaded justice, manipulating the system and those around him. But now, he was trapped in a prison of his own making. Ted Bundy wasn't born evil, but his life slowly veered toward darkness. He was born Theodore Robert Cowell on November 24th, 1946 inches, Burlington, Vermont, to an unmarried young woman, Louise Bundy. Ted's early life was full of confusion as he was raised by his grandparents, believing his mother was his older sister. Despite these early struggles, Bundy was considered a bright and charismatic child. He had a natural charm that helped him make friends, and he did well in school. As he grew older, his good looks and smooth personality helped him fit in. But beneath the surface, Bundy was a man with a dark side. In the early 1970 seconds, Bundy began to commit a series of horrifying crimes. He lured women to secluded areas, using his charm to gain their trust before overpowering and assaulting them. His victims were usually young women with long, dark hair parted in the middle, a specific type he appeared to be obsessed with. At exactly 7:06 a.m. on January 23rd, 1989, Florida State Prison starts the official 24-hour countdown to execute one of the most notorious serial killers in America. I think society deserves to be protected from me and from others like me. That's for sure. Ted Bundy wakes up in a cell. For over a decade, he has managed to delay his execution. His team of lawyers, consisting of public defenders such as Polly Nelson and James Coleman, have been filing direct appeals and submitting emergency motions, arguing that he's not mentally stable for years now. Young man, thank you. You're a bright young man. You made a good lawyer. I'd have loved to have you practice in front of me, but you went another way, partner. He used every single loophole there was, but for the first time, it looks like it's not going to work out anymore. Ted gets the same cup of prison coffee he gets all the time. While his lawyers work on last-minute appeals, they try everything to delay the execution. His constitutional rights were violated during the trial. The evidence was handled incorrectly. All of these arguments are being presented, but one by one, it seems like they're getting denied. After all, Ted confessed to the murders of at least 30 people, almost all of them being young women with long, dark brown hair, and his real body count is believed to be far higher. Each time I'd harm someone, each time I'd kill someone, there'd be an enormous amount of horror, guilt, remorse afterwards. His crimes stretched across 7 different states. Ted used to pretend to have an injury. He would use a sling or a crutch and ask women to help him carry something into his car. But when they turned their back, he would knock them unconscious and drive away. He would assault, torture, and eventually take their lives. And even after their passing, he would often come back for days to assault their bodies. The U.S. Supreme Court rejects the last appeal by his lawyers. It's final now. There's no way that Ted will be able to delay it another time. These are truly his final hours now. I deserve certainly the most extreme punishment society has. 17 hours left. He's allowed a final visit with his mother, Louise Bundy. She spent years believing in his innocence. But now the truth is pretty much undeniable. Our relationship was always very special. We talked a lot together, and his brothers and sisters thought of him as just the top person in their lives, as we all do. He calls her multiple times from death row, asking her over and over again, "Do you believe I'm a monster?" he tells her. "I don't want to die." She also visits him in prison, but their conversation is short. There's no dramatic goodbye, just a quiet last exchange. 15 hours left. Ted meets with his spiritual advisor, Pastor Fred Lawrence. Even though Ted spent most of his life mocking religion and often thought that he was simply too intelligent to believe in anything like fate, in his final hours before his execution, He tries to find any sort of peace by talking to Fred. Although he starts off by saying that he takes full responsibility, he quickly shifts his story back towards societal issues. He tries to tell him that his problem is actually a byproduct of a larger cultural problem. As young boys do, we explored the back roads and sideways and byways of our neighborhood, and oftentimes people would dump the garbage and whatever they were cleaning out of their house. And from time to time, we'd come across books of a harder nature, more graphic, you might say, more explicit nature than we would encounter in your local grocery store. Although he took the lives of many, he is truly afraid to experience it himself, which is why he tries one last thing. He tells the investigators more details about his potential victims. He describes where he buried some of his victims' remains, and he tells them about a skull near Washington in an area that was already tied to some of his known victims. And the FBI agents and local investigators actually rushed to the scene to try to verify his claims. If those were true, they would actually be able to close some of the cases that were never solved or never directly tied to him. He's offered his final meal steak cooked medium rare, eggs over easy, toast with butter and jelly, milk and juice. But despite the ample food, Bundy barely touched it. His appetite had vanished, overwhelmed by the fear and anxiety of what was to come. By 8 p.m., crowds had formed. Some came to protest, while others cheered Bundy's execution. The media chaos was noticeable, with news cameras flashing and crowds chanting. One of the most notorious chants was heard repeatedly in the air. "Burn, Bundy, burn." This reflected the widespread outrage and vengeance that many people felt toward him for his heinous crimes. While Ted is actually rotting inside his cell, outside of the prison, a crowd had already been gathering for hours. Hundreds of people have shown up with signs, food, and lawn chairs, waiting for what they see as the moment justice is finally served. Is this what you expected to find? Folks dancing and stuff? Yeah, why not? Protesters. Victims' families are all celebrating in the streets. They're waving signs that say, "Burn Bundy, burn, roast in peace." It could be considered a full public event. People are really happy about the fact that a man is about to die. It gets so out of hand that somebody attending even gets arrested for celebrating with fireworks. Ted is woken up and told to shave and get a shower. There's no delay. No call from the governor. This is really happening now. His lawyers and him weren't able to pull off a last-minute miracle, some legal technicality to get out of this one. 30 minutes left, the guards come. Witnesses can tell that he's scared. His hands tremble. Just hours before, he told James Dobson he felt great remorse, and his crimes should be a warning of the dangers. 1 minute left, he's strapped into the chair. The straps are tightened around his chest, wrists, and ankles, and the electrodes are fixed to his legs, while a sponge is placed on his scalp. 42 witnesses watch, journalists, officials, and a few family members of his victims. When Ted is asked if he has any final words, he looks at his lawyer and pastor and says, "I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends." That was Ted Bundy's last statement. The executioner throws the switch. At exactly 7:16 a.m., 2,000 volts of electricity surged through Bundy's body. Witnesses reported that his body tensed violently in response to the electrical current. The air filled with the smell of burning flesh. Ted Bundy is pronounced dead. Once the message gets out, the crowd erupts in celebration. Fireworks go off again, and people are smiling and laughing. The man who sparked fear into the lives of millions is now gone. Aileen Wuornos, the damsel of death's final day. For this next person, people aren't so sure about whether she's a cold-blooded murderer or a victim of the system. Let them know the cops knew who I was. I left prints everywhere and they covered it up to turn me into a serial killer. Aileen Wuornos is known as America's first female serial killer, and her childhood was probably among the worst imaginable. She grew up with a father who was a convicted child molester who also ended his life in prison while her mother abandoned her when she was just a baby. By her teenage years, she was living on the streets, engaging in escort services to survive and hitchhiking across the country. You had been working as a prostitute for a while before then. I was doing real good monetarily. Yeah, I was making hand over fist of money. She would call her and slowly pressure her to confess by saying that she was scared of being blamed for the murders. "Don't you love me anymore? You don't trust me or anything. I mean, you're gonna let me get in trouble for something that I didn't do." I said I'm not. "Listen, quit crying. I can't help it. I'm scared. If I have to confess, I will." "Okay. Yes. How did you do this? Why did you do this?" And after a series of calls, Aileen would finally break. She confessed to killing them, but she claimed that it was out of self-defense the men tried to assault her while she was working. I never provoked those guys. I never provoked them. I never showed any provocations whatsoever. I was very nice, very decent, very clean, very ladylike. I didn't even swear in front of my clients. A lot of my clients, I talked about Jesus and I talked political, both mixed together, and we never argued. So there was no provocation whatsoever. There was no need for them to look for the closest weapon in the vehicle and try to use it on me. 2 did. 5 tried. It's October 8th, 2002. And it is Aileen's final day on this earth. 24 hours left. Aileen wakes up early in her death row cell at Florida State Prison. Even though she knows exactly what day it is, her morning routine hasn't changed in the last 20 years. Prison staff bring her a basic breakfast of scrambled eggs, toast, and milk. She eats in silence. Earlier that year, she accused the guards of contaminating her food with dirt and urine. She said they were torturing and tormenting her, trying to push her over the edge. But today, she doesn't complain. She just eats her last meal. She then receives the final word. All attempts to stop her execution have failed. An advocacy group called Florida Support filed a last-minute appeal. Their argument was that Aileen wasn't actually mentally competent and shouldn't be executed. But their appeal is denied as Aileen expected it to be. Unlike Ted Bundy, Aileen had accepted her fate long ago. She had waived several appeals in the past and requested that the court stop all legal efforts to delay her execution. She even wrote to the Florida Supreme Court saying, "You motherfuckers keep fucking with my goddamn execution. There's going to be bloodshed. I'm sick of this shit. Get that fucking warrant signed." 16 hours left. Aileen tells the guards that she has no final meal request. Anything under $20 was on the table, but she declined the offer. All she wants is a single cup of black coffee. Nothing fancy. She sits down for her final interview. Nick Broomfield sits in front of her, and he's a filmmaker who has been following her case for years now for his documentary, Aileen, Life and Death of a Serial Killer. She has a bit of small talk with him, talking about ordinary stuff, but this casual tone doesn't last forever. Their conversation suddenly takes a dark turn. She tells Nick about how she was tortured at the prison, and how the guards used sonic pressure on her scalp, and that they tried to poison her. "I was tortured at BCI. They had the intercom on in the room and they kept lying that it wasn't on, and they were using sonic pressure on my head since 1997. Every time I started writing something, it went up higher. So I'm thinking that probably had the TV rigged. The TV or the mirror. Something was rigged." Aileen returns to her cell and sits quietly on her bed. There aren't any more visitors, no family, and no friends. Even her long-term girlfriend had ceased communication years ago. Did you feel Tyria was into it for money as well? Well, now I look at it, yes, definitely. She was using me monetarily. So was my first lover before Tyria. I bought her a pressure cleaning business and everything, and she took off 2 months after I bought it for her. And now it's Steve and Arlene as well. Everybody, they must be the economy. Man, everybody seems like they just care about the money. They don't care about me. The only thing she can do is wait. 10 hours left outside the prison. A small crowd gathers. Some are protesters arguing that she was a victim of society and not an actual serial killer, and others are simply there to observe the spectacle that is about to go down. Aileen asks for a towel and a washcloth to clean up. It's one of the only requests she makes all day, and she doesn't cry or scream. She just keeps waiting. It's time. Aileen is led out of her cell and escorted to the death chamber. There's no struggle and no last-minute plea. She just lies down on the gurney. Her arms are strapped up. 2 IVs are placed into her veins while 32 witnesses watch from behind the glass. When she's asked if she has any last words, she proceeds to deliver one of the strangest final moments in U.S. death row history. She says, "I'd just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus. June 6th, like the movie, big mothership and all. I'll be back." And with that, the chemicals begin to flow. And 8 minutes later, Aileen Wuornos is officially pronounced dead at the age of 46. What do you think of the fact that this may be over? Oh, I hope it is. I really do. I really hope for people's peace of mind. Governor Tim Kaine denies a final request for leniency. The U.S. Supreme Court has already declined to intervene. John is informed that the execution will proceed as planned.